Welcome to episode 17 of our second series on the surnames and earliest families of Appalachia and the American South. One of our families today is also in my own family tree, so I'm a little extra excited about today's show. I hope you'll join me. Number 1, Riley, O'Reilly. This Irish family name was anglicized from the Gaelic. In Ireland, it's most often spelled as O'Reilly or Riley. Phonics apparently worked for some folks in this family tree, that's for sure. So it was simplified even more to Riley, as in Fort Riley, Kansas. It's been in the South since 1635, when 3 brothers from Ireland landed on the northern shores of the Chesapeake Bay. Their names were, Garrett, Miles, and Thomas. Now, if you're interested in reading more about the history of this particular Irish-American family, check out the reprinted 2014 book, The Colonial Riley Families of the Tidewater Frontier, 1635 to 1699. It was written by Robert Sean Riley. Number 2, Proctor. Here's one of my family names. It's not unusual for me to get a message that reads something like this. Now, I got this one a few weeks ago. Said, my folks been in eastern Kentucky since before 1850, so why ain't you talked about them? Lord have mercy, Van boy, you're as dumb as a dish rag. Well, what's even more perplexing to me is that the critic didn't give the family's surname, so I don't know who they were or what name to cover. Well, as I've said a few times here on the show, I do these names, families, and surnames in the order in which I received them. And so far, we've covered 908 family names, but there remain 759 on the list to cover. If I played favorites, I would cover my own family names first, but that wouldn't be fair to you. Now, to make it an ethical situation, I only cover names that have been requested by a viewer, not me. I can do my own research, and I know very few people really care about my own family tree, so I would do that on my own anyway. Anyway, the family Proctor is one of my ancestral tree dwellers, but it was requested by someone that I don't know, and maybe they're a distant cousin. This English surname was given to a person who worked as a procurator, agent, or an administrator. While families named Proctor were living in Ireland and Scotland in the mid-1600s, that'd be the 17th century, there were already members of this English family living in the greater Jamestown, Virginia area. That's right, Jamestown, as in the cannibalistic situation that occurred there between 1609 and 1610. According to Henricus Historical Park, John Proctor arrived in Jamestown sometime around 1609-1610 on board a ship called the Sea Venture. Alice, his wife, arrived a decade later on a ship named George. That's a really interesting name, probably because the king was named George, somewhere around that time. They survived the merciless massacre of the 300 settlers at the hands of the Powhatans on March 22nd, 1622. But I'm not proud to say that they were later acquitted for causing the violent deaths of 2 young indentured servants. She was for one and he was for the other one. But they were wealthy tobacco farmers, so they could afford the resources to mount an effective defense. Nobody, I don't think, was too interested in taking care of those poor indentured kids. That's just a shame, folks. I'm sorry, but it touches my heart to think of some kid coming over here to work basically as a slave for 7 or 8 years on somebody's estate. It just breaks my heart. At any rate, early colonial folks named Proctor came from England. Later, immigrants with that name could have come from Ireland or Scotland, but probably not early on. Number 3, Armstrong. Doesn't this name suggest that the first family to be called Armstrong were kind of like Popeye the Sailor Man after he had consumed a can of spinach? Sailing and spinach aside, though, it was given to a person with a strong arm. It was introduced into the Isles by a Norman French soldier in a family that he probably brought with him or married when he got here. Its name was Fortinbras. It almost sounds German, doesn't it? Fortinbras. Which translate literally into English as strong in the arm. The name was further hybridized into English, and the family settled into the border country of Scotland and England. That'd be up the northern part of England, southern part of Scotland. During the plantation of Ulster in the 17th century, the early part of the 17th century, under James VI and I, many border families took advantage of long-term lease opportunities in Northern Ireland, or Ulster, and relocated there. Armstrong is still common in Ulster, Northern Ireland. Many of their kinfolks came to America, though, where they adopted the ethnic label Scotch-Irish. Before you tell me that Scotch is a whiskey and not a people, you can stop typing. I didn't fall off a tomato truck on my way to the studio this morning, although I feel like I did, though. In America, Scotch-Irish is a distinct ethnicity that is recognized by the United States Census Bureau. Just look it up. In Europe, they are labeled Ulster Scots, which many Americans have also embraced, and I have too at times, along with Scots-Irish. Not Scotch-Irish, but Scots-Irish. Let's look at the earliest Armstrongs that I could find in the South or Appalachia. Martin Armstrong was a Revolutionary War veteran who also worked as a surveyor, a land surveyor, kind of like George Washington. And he, like George Washington, was also a politician, although on a smaller scale. Martin was born in Augusta County, Virginia, the fourth son of James and Jean Armstrong. They had relocated from Lancaster County in Pennsylvania, up there where the Amish have settled quite heavily, sometime before his birth. That'd be around 1750. I'd say the Armstrongs moved from Virginia to Anson County, North Carolina, and settled on the banks of the Catawba River. In time, the family spread south and further west. But Martin Armstrong settled in Surrey County, North Carolina, where more than 50 land grants or land patents were issued in his name. With respect to the ethnic background of the Armstrongs and others from that particular part of the world, I've used all the various labels associated with the Scots who came to America from Ireland, including Irish Protestants. In the end, it's your choice. Just know that there is no label that will make everyone happy. Number 4, red wine. If you're like me, I thought that this South German family was so named because the earliest members of the family had a preference for raising red grapes to make fermented, to make wine. But that apparently was not the case. Nope. In its original form, red wine was presented as rettenwijn, which could translate into English as a tax levied on the transfer of vineyard land. However, the Dictionary of American Family Names says otherwise. It claims that rettenwijn was derived from ratvijn or ratvin. Let me try that again. Ratvin, a personal name which doesn't appear in Hans Ballow's book on German names. Consequently, I like my interpretation better because it makes sense of the two syllables that make up the name. According to Martha Clinard Nelson in her 1990 book titled Red Wine Ancestors and Descendants of John and Sarah and Other Red Wines, John Redwine was born in 1756 and died in 1800. He and Sarah lived much of their lives in Rowan County, North Carolina, where they produced quite a litter of their own young'uns. They had 10 of them. Wow. But you know, that wasn't uncommon back in those days, and it wasn't even uncommon in the early 1900s in Appalachia. My own great-grandparents came out of families that had 10 kids each. When it's all said and done, though, I'm confident that this antebellum Southern family originated in Germany, Southern Germany in particular. Number 5, Tankersley. This surname originated in Yorkshire, England, where the Vikings liked to settle. It meant Thancred's clearing, and I'm probably mispronouncing that. Apparently the family's land had been carved out of a wooded, forested area. Over there they like to call forests woods, just like we do here in the South. It looks like the members of this family loaded up what served as a truck back in those days and moved with Sarah Ann Beverly, not to the hills of Beverly Hills, but to Virginia. Sadly, their surname has since died out of Great Britain and Ireland. Now, while I can't speak for Canada and Australia, the British colonies in North America appealed to some of their family members. And one of the earliest records that I could find was of Richard Tankersley, who served as a witness for the last will and testament for an apparent ancestor of the former football quarterback Tim Tebow. That auspicious event took place in Virginia in 1705. Sarah Beverly, who I mentioned earlier, arrived in Virginia in 1708 with her husband Reuben Tankersley. They settled on a land grant in King George County, Virginia. At the end of the day, we can be confident that this Southern antebellum family originated in England. That's about all I have for you today. Thanks for joining me. And if you'd like a list of the names of families that we've covered so far, please write to me at vantagepoint22@gmail.com, and I will send you the list as a PDF file. Until I see you again, may the good Lord bless and keep you. May He make His face shine on you. Bye-bye.